This is Sexuality of Mankind. Everyone knows superficially how sex and sexuality in mankind works. Never has such a subject been so done to death, as you might say, than this one, which has been from times past, been forever the subject of conjecture. People who are alive and living in the physical world simply cannot know the whole truth about sex. As we have said already, we have no intention whatsoever of leaving this world's humanity in any doubt of what the real truth is, but we should explain why it is that religions, which are to a certain extent guided by the unseen hand, speak constantly of virginity and of the desirability of purity in females, but never in males, of the total undesirability of divorce and the adultery and of the total undesirability of divorce and adultery, and of desiring one's neighbour's wife or one's neighbour's ox or anything else which is his and which belongs to someone else. Everyone knows what radiance comes upon the face of those who are lucky enough to find exactly the right person, and how that person seems positively to radiate and glow throughout their lives, and to be replaced with the saddest sickness if the person who gives them this radiance is taken away from them. Very often the bereft person will even commit suicide in the hope of joining their loved one, as life has ceased to have any further meaning for them whatsoever. All of life, everywhere in this universe, or whatever structure it may be, is powered by some or one or other form of electricity, and this is the whole basis of life, and the whole basis of the universe itself, and the way that it is run, and the way that it runs constantly, and so too are we, the creatures that are created within it, also created by this electricity. So it is that we, who are speaking to this lady, that's my mother, in whom we have placed our trust and confidence, in whom we are constantly working, and upon whom we place our hopes of telling this message successfully to the right people in government, no hope of that. The basic essence of the person which dwells within the brain, the mind, the very person who lives in the destructible shell of the human body, is a mass, a tangle of such complicated electrical signals that no one can possibly understand it in any way whatsoever, but it is known, and it is becoming known, that the human brain gives off certain signals, and now in this modern world you have the equipment to discover this fact for yourselves, and to ascertain on which sort of frequency each individual lives and will do forever, because he or she belongs on that particular frequency, and in the future everyone must know not only what blood group he or she belongs in, but on what frequency he or she works on. This will prove to be of the utmost importance. Everyone knows that in the male animal and in the male human being, it is he, the male, who must make thrusting movements of sex, thrusting movements which not only plant the seed which creates new life, but which in a perfect union between two living human beings creates something else besides, which is very different to the lower creatures, excepting perhaps some higher forms of monkey, horses and dogs, not in other animals. Animals use their sexuality in a ritualistic way, simply for procreating, and they know this perfectly well themselves. Very rarely bother with each other, excepting only for mating and rearing young, which is pure instinct in all of them. Human beings, too, are guided quite definitely by instinct and intuition, as it is known and described very often, especially in their choosing of a mate. They often say that the average woman can know if a man, she has any possibilities with a man within the first 10 seconds of meeting him. All things are, in your modern world, all the old basic clans have disappeared, and all the various and different types of people are now split up forever. Young people of all different types and sorts of looks must hope that at some chance meeting at the house of a friend, at a dance hall, at work, or by the purest chance, he or she may meet the person they are looking for, the perfect mate. And really the quest is next door to hopeless. A young man or girl must marry someone who looks right, as they are probably nice people in 80% of cases. Their marriage is successful enough, and they have nice children and enjoy their lives. But this, the real truth, a marriage with someone else who was exactly right for each of them would bring about something very, very different indeed. Anyone who takes a serious look around them in any public place can see for themselves how the modern world is now peopled by middle-aged people who are grossly overweight, sallow and old-looking, with grim, tired, bored looks on their faces. And as we who are dictating this message have been looking at humanity over many hundreds of years can tell you, many of those who lived in previous centuries and remained with their own families, many of which groups were extremely rare, and lived extremely humble, deprived sort of lives, working hard from dawn to dusk, can tell many of these poor people who were married within their own clans, ate extremely simple food. They often remained very much more active until extreme old age, and were in the very many ways much brighter and far, far happier, without any entertainment to speak of, and very little in the way of amusement, excepting only that amusement that they could find from each other and from the visits of their children and looking after their children, which sort of life lived constantly with the right people seemed to make them happy and to keep them. My mother's put some kind of French in here, which I cannot understand at all. Keeps them, anyway, but it keeps them much better between people who have met by chance and those whose entertainment seems eventually to be their television sets. Little drives into the country in their motor cars and constant overeating. You have in this world today a very large number of people all over the civilized world, and yes, in Russia too. And slowly the same thing is beginning in China also, where once people remained together, and now clans are being broken up and destroyed by their governments, bored, miserable-looking people who are grossly overweight and discontent with their lot. This is directly the result of sex constantly with the wrong partner, and conversation which dribbles down to nothing, and children who in adult life turn after one parent or the other and disagree amongst themselves, and finally go away from their families and sometimes never return, and loneliness, terrible, utter loneliness, which is and must be the result. Old people living all alone because their children do not want them, do not love them, and find their company intolerable. It's not only old age which makes some people disgusting, boring, and awful to have around at the end of their lives, but all too often they have had to spend their lives with someone who bored them to death, and their sexual lives ended in early middle age. Their characters then became warped, changed in old age, shallow and meaningless, not only to themselves but to everyone else as well. It may seem that this is an exaggeration of the truth, but we can promise you it's not. What then is humanity is this sexual act. How many women turn away from sex when they have had a number of children they wish to have? Many men also find it a constant effort and either find themselves someone else on the side, as it were, if they have the means, or marry someone else or give it up altogether by the time they are 50. This picture is all too common and becomes more and more the case in the present modern world. As we have said in the preceding dictation, there can be only one way in the modern world, and that is not only by the setting up of a very new and different kind of marriage bureau, but of the keeping of family histories and the investigation into the recent past family history to discover where all the various members of the family have gone, and to try to get all these old clans together and to find out whom their true and right partners really are. On a scientific level, very much research must be done, and it must be done by those who have the means to do such research. And this is something which we shall give in the medical booklet, which we shall dictate to this lady. Only assiduous work over a long period will in the end bring the truth into your present medical fraternity, and bring your world to true modernity and very much greater happiness for the people that live on the physical side of this planet. And long after their lives are over, with every chance of future happiness in other lives, very much greater happiness in the non-physical side also. The key to all happiness, as all of the songs that are constantly sung will tell you, is this sexuality, or love as it is so called, all the time and constantly. Every male animal and male human being emits some sort of an electrical signal, and he needs to find a mate who is on a similar frequency, or at least an allied one, or he will find sex, even with the most beautiful woman, difficult, tiring, and unsatisfactory. Because at the present time, people are totally ignorant. Men think that perhaps failure in sex is perhaps her fault or his fault, or perhaps he is not as sexually successful as other men. He's heard boasting of their prowess with their fair sex, as it's called. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everyone is different. Everyone and no one can be successful in sex with just anyone who happens to look good and appeal to them visually. This is where people of the modern day are totally confused in their choice of a suitable mate. Provided he or she is good-looking, that must be the only thing they need to find in a sexual partner. Nothing could be further from the real truth. From the woman's point of view, sex with a man, even if she finds him very attractive, whose frequency is wrong for her, is also an unsatisfactory experience. And even though she may produce perfectly healthy children, she will never come to true happiness with that particular partner if she cannot reach a satisfactory sexual climax, which is the ultimate of a sexual relationship. And if after she may even do this, she feels utterly exhausted and needs to sleep for several hours to get over her union with him. Contrary to popular belief, it should not be necessary to sleep for several hours after sex. It should be possible to have sex with one's partner and feel uplifted and even exhilarated by this experience. And how rarely does it? For those who have found their mate by pure chance somewhere, and neither of them have any idea who they are, where they're from, or even if they might belong to any clan, as neither of them have any records whatsoever of their ancestors. This must all change if people are to come to greater happiness in the future, to know the real truth. But a satisfactory sexual union has a very great deal more to do with life on both structures than just to promote happiness and a sense of well-being. It is much more than this. Men from a very early age are aware of their sexual needs, whereas a young woman rarely is in the same way, until she has perhaps been married or had love affairs, and is thereafter deprived of it. Imagine the human body, as it were, as a complete electrical circuit, which it is in very many ways, with the nucleus of that circuit, the main powerhouse, the brain, from which all energy springs, all instructions and all power comes. That is how the body is powered. Imagine this, and imagine that a sexual union is taking place. Considerable effort must be expended by the man and also by the woman if the two people are both on different frequency. The result is really a very great loss of electrical power on both sides, with resulting exhaustion on both sides. Imagine two people who are perfectly attuned to each other electrically during this sexual union, promote power together, and the result is that they are both given a shot of power which helps them to go about their lives totally invigorated, and very, very different thing altogether. After life is over, people go with their sexual unions that they had during their physical lifetimes. They very rarely find anyone else unless they find an old lover from a previous lifetime with whom they become once more happy, and as the saying is, in love, someone who belongs within their own family clan. On the rest planes, sexual union between two absolutely suited people is even more important than it is on this structure, because it is the only way that those non-decaying bodies can be rejuvenated. Otherwise, they begin to deteriorate very much more quickly until that person must be stored away, as we have indicated already. People on the physical structure also really do, in the main, live longer if they are very happily married. Some do not, because their bodies are not very healthy in the first place. We have already mentioned the structure of humanity also. This is also important, even given the right structure of two people. This electrical frequency is the most important factor between two people that are right for one another. Girls and young men who simply believe that sex is nothing very much more than a physical exercise which satisfies a need are extremely ignorant and have no idea of the harm they do themselves. On the purely physical side, a very small girl who has sex with all sorts of different men, some of whom have a penis which is too large for her vagina, will almost certainly eventually have to have all her sexual organs removed later in life. She may very well become barren and worse. Tiny women who marry very tall men whose sexual organs are too large for them will most certainly have to have a hysterectomy because too great a strain has been placed upon them. Girls who have sex with very many different men, submitting their electrical circuits, if you like, to a very tremendous strain. And this is not only ages them very much more quickly, especially after the age of 30 or so, but it also has a very deteriorating effect upon the vital brain cells and other parts of their very complicated body. And this damage extends to the other structures of the body also. It must be obvious that as the other structured body cannot be created without the sexual union in the physical world, which creates the physical body, that the two bodies must be synonymous, both together, one with the other. And some of the damage which is done in some ways to the nervous system of the physical body also has its effect on the other body also, which is very much the same as the physical body, with a nervous system, muscles, bones and blood of a very different sort, and a brain cavity exactly the same on this other structure. Girls who become prostitutes almost always destroy themselves altogether. That is to say, their nervous systems are so damaged by the time they come to the rest planes that they are almost always placed in a very special machine which reprograms them, and they are thereafter returned to the animal kingdom. They are no longer human beings. Such disgust is in any case felt for women who so demean themselves, even if they are so poor that they feel themselves forced into such a course to make money, that very little concern is ever felt for such women. They are not fit mates for any man, and really prostitution is...
There.
Right.
Something about the mic. Just change. Interesting that. It just will...
I've only got one page to go.
Okay, start that again, and we'll just see if it's going to...
The basic essence of the person. Oh, wait a minute. That's the one. Such disgust, in any case, felt for women who so demean themselves, even if they are so poor that they feel themselves forced into such a course to make money, that very little concern is ever felt for such women. They are not fit mates for any man, and really prostitution is and must be the worst possible sort of trade which anyone ever engaged in. For innocent girls of the past who have been literally forced into such a trade, very special healing and curative processes have been used to help them, by the request of their families that love them, but for others no such privileges are ever accorded. Many girls of today, in complete and utter ignorance, have become very little better than loose women of the past who were paid for their favours. Girls of today not only receive no pay, but very many of them have already destroyed themselves in the eyes of the authorities here. One thing that will and shall be given to this world is the truth about the strict rules that govern this universe. Once humanity descends to the utmost base behaviour, once it behaves in a manner which even animals would shun, once it loses all sense of morality, regard for its fellows, then it really is, as you might say, heading only for its own destruction. The whole basis of humanity is love. The old religious codes which tried to teach morality, goodness, honour, kindness, and complete and utter consideration for others was not nonsense. It was and is the only possible code of behaviour for humanity. Because once this is lost, then humanity will and must destroy itself. It can only be a matter of time. The real truth about the laws that govern humanity, the fact that everyone is watched in some way, must be revealed to humanity via this book. This we intend to do, we shall do, with the help not only of this lady, but others who will give their help. Humanity must learn to work all the time together for each other, as we shall so indicate, and a humanity which is in its private life absolutely happy is better fitted to tackle the terrible problems that face this planet. And that's it, Miles. Okay? Miles?